In today's video, we'll take a look at the sum array method. So not sum as in sum of numbers, but sum as in some elements abide by these rules, right? So imagine this. Imagine you have an array and you want to check if there are any elements that abide by some condition, right? So for example, in our array, if we want to check if there are any negative numbers, right, we would be using the sum array method. And how does it work? Well, it's simple. So we can use it by saying array.sum, and this guy takes in as a first parameter the callback function. So we can have either an anonymous function or an arrow function. I'm going to start with an anonymous function, right? And what this function has as a parameter is element. And that element is every single element inside our array, right? This guy will iterate over every single element of the array and call this callback function for every single element, where lm is going to be first 55, then 100, then -2, and then 89. And it's going to check if our function returns true or false. If it returns false, it's going to continue executing, right? But if at one point returns true, it's going to, as a whole, like the result of the sum call is going to return true, right? So here we can say, what's our condition? We want to check if we have any numbers that are negative. So we can say return whether or not our element that we currently are on is less than 0. If it's less than 0, then return true. Otherwise, return false, right? And here we can say result equals this, because that's where the result is going to be at the return value of the sum call. And then we can actually print it on the screen and say, okay, well, res, there we go. And if I run this, you'll notice I get true. That's because, well, we do have a negative number, right? We have -2. And this is how the sum array method worked. So it was iterating over the whole array. So it went over 55. So lm is going to be 55 first. It checked, is 55 less than 0? This guy returned false. So it continued onwards. We get 100. Element will be 100. And then it asked, is 100 less than 0? Well, no, of course. So we returned false. Then it went on to execute over -2. And -2 is going to be the element, and -2 is going to be less than 0. So this guy returned true, and because one of them returns true, this whole thing automatically returns true without executing any further. So there's no point in executing even further, because already some of the elements actually return true for this condition. So let's say we actually do remove the negative number here and we say just +2. Well, if we run this now, you'll notice we get false, because it iterated over every single one of them and none of them returned true, right? We went, okay, 2, elements 2, well, no, it's not, so return false. Then lm is 89, well, is 89 less than 0? Well, no, false. So it got to the end of the array without anything returning true, so it returned false as a result. Simple enough. Now here are some less known features about this array method. Basically, first, like most other array methods that take in a callback, you can specify here as the second parameter the index of that element, right? So for 100, this index will be 1. For 2, this index will be 2, and so on. And as the third parameter, you can specify the array, like the array you're actually iterating over. In some cases, you might want this, because you might have this function not anonymous, but really clearly defined somewhere else inside a file, and you don't know where it's going to be used, so that could be very useful. Right, so I can actually specify here, okay, well, I want our element, I want to check if there are some elements that not only is less than 0, but it also on an, let's say, even index. How do we check that? Well, we can say just if index %2 is 0 and our element is less than 0, then return true. So now, since my -2 is actually on index 2, we should still get true. So if I change this, we get true. But if we instead add here, for example, another number, like let's say 7, so we make -2 be actually on index number 3. So if I change that, now we're going to get false because, well, the index is actually the index inside the array. And like most other array methods that take in a callback, you can also specify the this argument or the this value inside our function. So if I console log here this, I'm just going to console log it, and we're going to get it multiple times on the screen. We're going to get lots of garbage, probably the execution context of Node, because I'm using Node here to run our Java. But we can actually specify that, basically this, to be whatever we want as our second parameter to our sum call. So here we have the first parameter, this whole function. The second one will go over here and we'll say, well, let's say test. So we want our this value to actually just be the string test. And if we try to run this now, you'll notice I get test multiple times on the screen. We actually get it 5 times because our array is of length 5. Okay, so now let's go over to the initial example. So I'm going to remove this parameter here, and I'm also going to remove the index and the inner array. That's not useful anymore. Remove this, and also remove this index condition because we no longer have the index. So this was the way it was implemented, right? So now if we run this, we get true because we have a negative number. But here we can actually use an arrow function due to it being very small. Like we only have one parameter, we only have one statement, and we also return that statement. So all these 3 conditions are true. That means that we can actually use an arrow function very effectively in this place. So we can remove the function keyword. We can even remove the parentheses because we only have just one parameter. Then add an arrow, remove the brackets and the return keyword, just like so. Remove the brackets, remove the semicolon, and there you go. This is how simple the sum call can be. And now if we run this, we're just going to get the same result. And even if we, for example, make this -2 positive, it's going to be false, right? So it still works the same way. So let's take a look at a more practical example. Here I have a list of PCs and I'm looking for an AMD CPU, right? So this shop is selling these 4 PCs. I don't wanna waste my time to go to that shop just to find out that they are not selling the right kind of CPU for me. So we can actually check this using the sum array method in this case. So you can say array.sum, or so we can say PC shop.sum because this guy is an array, and then we can use here a simple arrow function. So we can say PC, and then we know that each PC has the property CPU, so that's what we're looking for. I want that CPU inside its characters to include the string AMD, right? If you don't know what includes does, it basically checks if this string has this other string inside of it, right? You can basically check out more details at the link up top. I have made a video on this. So right now we're checking if there's some PC, right, that has the CPU AMD. And if we're taking the result of this, so say let result equals this, I'm just going to actually put it here so you can see it all, and console log result. And if I run this, you'll notice it returns true because yes, in fact, there is a PC that has the CPU AMD. If I, for example, remove these that do have it, so just like so, and we only have like 2 PCs that both have Intel, so no AMD here, well, it's going to return false, right? So I hope this all makes sense for you. I hope you find this video useful and you got something out of it. If you have any questions, do leave them down in the comments below or on our Discord server. Thank you guys so much for watching, and well, see you next time. Take care. Bye.